Hi, I'm Aria, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to a new book club video series called Composting Competition and Moving Toward Compersion, in which my beautiful Metamour, Salina, and I discuss Marie Thouin's new book, What is Compersion? Understanding Positive Empathy in Consensual Non-Monogamous Relationships. Salina and I are both relationship coaches supporting people practicing non-monogamy, and we both have backgrounds in somatics and mindfulness. And on our first meeting, we discovered that polyamory is both of our favorite topics, and I'm so excited to delve into this book together and share more about our journeys to find compersion, the positive emotion of taking joy in your partner's delight, as well as sharing some of our own journeys and struggles with the antonym of compersion, jealousy. For a little lay of the land, in our conversations, you may hear me reference my nesting partner, Sky, who I've been with for 12 years. Sky currently has a couple other partners, and some of my reflections on compersion may pertain to our relationships with them. Salina is married to Justin, and they've been primary partners for the last 12 years. Justin and I started dating in January of 2024, or 7 months ago, which is about the same time that Salina started working with Marie as her personal coach. And I think it's fair to say that our whole polycule has directly benefited from Marie's work in the world even before reading this book. So thank you so much to Marie for helping us all learn how to expand our hearts and build relationships that are simultaneously more compassionate, loving, fulfilling, and free.
Hmm.
Hi, Salina.
Ready to get this party started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, as part of our book club, we want to integrate some somatic practice and mindfulness because for Aria and I, it's been such a healing space. And also, it's this beautiful space where we get to like co-regulate with each other and also widen our tool belt. Like, how do we have more practices that support us in this like super tender work? And we're going to start with a little somatic moment. And today I was thinking I'd share EFT, an emotional freedom technique. Have you ever done that one before?
Yeah, my stepmom teaches it. I love it.
Oh, how cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love this one because it involves tapping, which my nervous system loves. And then I get to choose a affirmation. And I almost feel as I'm tapping like it's being stitched and woven into my being. And I was thinking for the affirmation that we could choose would be I'm composting competition and moving towards collaboration. Like
Beautiful.
that one?
Love that. Sounds spot on. Let's do it.
Beautiful. So let's just get in our cozy seats. Maybe softening the eyes if that feels good. Oh, maybe rolling the shoulders away from the ears. Opening up the chest, the lungs, and the heart. Maybe pressing the feet into the earth, remembering you belong and you're perfect just as you are in this moment. Taking a couple breaths here, imagining that we are releasing any of the resistance or any obstacles that are getting in the way of us sharing our full hearts. And we'll tap a few different acupressure points. And I'll say this affirmation. And if you feel called, you might repeat it out loud or you might just breathe it in. It's totally your choice. But we'll start at the top of our heads. Oh, I am composting competition and moving towards collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Moving our fingers to the temples and the sides of the and composting competition and moving towards collaboration. Tapping above the eyebrows on the forehead. I am composting competition and moving towards collaboration. Tapping the jawline and the cheekbones. So I'm composting competition and moving towards collaboration. Now moving the fingertips to collarbone, the center of the chest. I'm composting competition and moving towards collaboration. When you feel complete, just slowly coming to a pause, maybe allowing the hands to kind of sit on the lap. Just noticing any of those sensations in the body. And just taking your time to slowly come back, stretching, yawning. Thank you. That was so nice.
Yeah, thank you for that practice. Beautiful.
I feel like this is exciting. I felt this way with you since I first met you. It's like this excitement and anxiety sometimes at the same time, like of like all this incredible magic between us that's so rich and exciting to me, even at the same time, like my fears as you as a metamour. And I just want to set the intention of creating this pathway of trust, this space of authenticity and cooperation. Any other words you want to sprinkle in there for our time? Like this
I
space we
love
want
that
to
so
co-create?
much. Yeah, I feel like you named the big ones. Yeah, authenticity, vulnerability,
Hmm.
yeah, trust, softening, real talk.
Love it. Softening, real talk. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, before we dive into this work, I'm curious if there's any identities, any parts of yourself that you want to presence that really inform like how you engage with polyamory, how you engage with compersion, just anything that feels like helpful to kind of bring into the space so people know us better.
Yeah, definitely. I am 39 years old. I use she, her pronouns. I've been non-monogamous for more than a decade, and now I identify as polyamorous, bisexual, queer, cisgender femme. I practice kitchen table polyamory, and I live with my nesting partner, Sky, in the East Bay of San Francisco, also known as unceded Ohlone land. We have decided not to have children together, so I am intentionally childless. My ancestors were primarily Hungarian, Irish, and English, though there is a very small amount of indigenous Maidu blood in my body, and I've been on a long ancestral healing journey to decolonize my thinking and try to reclaim some of that connection to Mother Earth that these long lost ancestors once practiced. And the word ecosexual really resonates with me. What else? I grew up in what appeared to be a white, middle class, heteronormative family structure in a small town in Oregon. My mother and father have both been divorced and married multiple times. And it wasn't until I left for college that my mother came out as a lesbian. And I share that because overcoming that intergenerational, internalized homophobia and shame around desire to be with the same gender has definitely been a big part of this journey for me. And I think my bisexuality is a big reason why I really resonate with polyamory. It means I don't have to choose what gender I want to be with. I can experience the joys of all genders. Yeah, I think those are kind of the main identities that feel worth bringing into this discussion. What about you?
Yeah, I love hearing that. It's so good. I really appreciate this invitation in general because I feel like it's been my experience that the non-monogamous polyamorous world is predominantly white, and often, as is in many realms of the world, that those voices who get presence are often white males. And so I'm so happy to be bringing in different perspectives and also naming that like our identities really shape who we are and shape how we engage with this work. So love that, period. Let's see. Salina May Espinosa, Salina May Sayre Espinosa Sechko is my full name. My pronouns are she, hers, and Aya. I identify as queer. That word really resonates with me growing up in the Bay. Been queer since I was like 11, or like that. I think that's really when I had the awakening. I was blessed to be raised with aunts on both sides that were lesbians and got married when I was in my, like in elementary school. So my parents really raised me with a openness towards like gender expression and queerness, which I fucking love. I am multiracial. So my father identifies as white and my mom identifies as Chicana, Mexican American, Indigenous, and they met in the integration movement in the Bay Area. And that like mixed experience has been such a part of my life. I strongly and fiercely identify as Chicana, which is, you know, not a word everybody still uses, but it means Mexican American mestiza. And having had my grandparents that were really loud and proud Chicanos, like that is a word that really resonates with me, that pride over having grown up in this California Southwest place that has roots in Mexico and indigenous communities where in Spain. Um, what else might I say? Yeah, I identify as cisgender, female, femme. I'm one of 10 kids. That has been a big part. I'm like older sister forever. I'm the second child. So my mom and dad had 6 together. And then my dad had 4 more with his second wife. I have 2 stepsisters. And just like big family systems has been forever something really heartbreaking and heart opening and powerful and all the things. Like big family. Auntie, like really take my role as auntie similarly, like I'm choosing not to have children. And that was a hard and long choice for me, but I've really arrived at this beautiful place of agency and power and choice around it, and really embrace all of the little ones who are, I get the gift of being a godmom and a fairy godmom and an auntie too, a tia. I was a classroom teacher for like 17 years, taught in school systems on the front lines of a lot of trauma and brilliance and beauty in communities that historically have been oppressed. And it's a passion of mine to support those still that are on the front lines of these very toxic systems, but have beautiful human beings in them. So like I'm an educator and a teacher forever. I grew up in the Bay, feel so fucking grateful for that. And then the last 3 years, my husband and I have moved to Grass Valley, which is this beautiful patch of earth that's near the Yuba River and the cedar trees and the foxes and the deers and hawks. And that was tended to and loved many years before colonization by the Nisenan people who are still here. And yeah, this is a place that's deeply impacted by colonization and the gold rush. It's like a fascinating place of both magic and heartache. And I'm grateful I get to call it home here on 3 acres. Yeah.
Beautiful. Hmm.
That was a big it's
It's
a lot.
great.
There's a lot of different identities, but that's a window.
It's a great orientation into how I think how we're both thinking about this work and where we're coming from and lived experiences. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been such a joy to get to be in this collaboration with you. And I feel so grateful to Marie, who's been coaching me for about 7 months and holding my hand towards expanding and growth and moving through a lot of tender ground. And I wonder if you would just start by speaking to, because it was the book, well, I don't know whose idea it was. I feel like maybe it like kind of happened at the same time. Maybe we were both drawn to it, but I'd love for you to speak to like why this book club, why with me, why this book.
Yeah, I love that. I think from our first meetup, I could tell we were going to be fast friends pretty quickly. It was just clear to me that we had some values alignment in terms of how we approach our kind of philosophy of trauma-informed polyamory and some shared aspirations of supporting other people on their journey, and love the idea of future retreats to bring people together in person to create brave spaces for healing and connection. And when it comes to the book, when I came to your house for the first time a few months ago, I saw Justin's bookshelf of all of his polyamory literature. And I remember asking him if I could borrow one of his books, and he said no, which I actually loved because my like poly reference books are so precious to me, and I actually wouldn't lend those out either. And I remember telling him as I was looking at his books, there's this new book coming out on compersion that I'm really excited to read. And compersion seems to come very naturally to him, and felt like maybe he was less interested, but then very quickly was like, oh, this is Salina's coach who wrote this book. And it seemed like you had a lot more excitement around reading it. And I think it started as this kind of personal project for us to get to know each other and build rapport. And I think that kind of intention shifted a little bit when we had our Week of Visibility for Non-Monogamy event, where we all talked very vulnerably about our journeys with non-monogamy. And one of my dear friends said she absolutely loved the event, but her favorite part was watching me and you interact because it was so tender and heartfelt. And then also watching Justin tear up, kind of seeing like the sweetness between us. And when I heard her say that, a light bulb kind of went off in my head. It was like the part of me that is trained in media production and storytelling was like, oh, we should record this book club and share it with people. I love that you were game to record this and share it with people, and it definitely changes the structure a little bit, but I'm really excited to have a space for vulnerable conversations and creating media that I'm not seeing in other places.
I got chills when you said that. I love that. I actually hadn't heard that book story. That's really cute.
He was like, sorry, no, you can't borrow my book.
He loves his books. I get
I do
it.
too. I get it. Yeah.
I stamping everything that you said, and I think for me is the accountability. And you and I had talked about this around like your choice to become E&M coach, because there is this like added layer, I think, of like integrity. I'm doing this in this format with you, which I think is this aspect for me of like the greater polycule, which for me serves as this accountability in a culture that's so individualistic. It's like there's this added layer of acknowledgement of like our actions impact each other both positively and negatively. And so for me, while it feels like still hella vulnerable, and I feel like I have so much work left to do on my compersion journey, like I am not there. But for me, it both like motivates me to see you and hear your stories like deeply. Like I feel like since I've met you, I have like grown. And part of that is witnessing how you do things and how you have been interacting with me. And then also some, accountability around like, I know you, I care about you, and I want to do right by you. And you're a mirror for me. That's important. And like a culture that often, ghosts and doesn't, has like a lack of care.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that sentiment. Yeah, holding each other to higher standards of care, I think, is a great thing to aspire to.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to dive into some of these key parts of the book. And today we're exploring the introduction and the foreword. And the title of the book is What is Compersion? Which for many people, I don't know about you, but I've had to like educate so many people in my life. It's very cute to me. Like my work community now uses it in a kind of a platonic way all the time. Like I have compersion for you. It's so cute. And so many folks like don't know what compersion is. And so I'm wondering if you actually might start to speak to a little bit how Marie talks about compersion and also like how you talk about compersion. Are you open to doing that?
I think the writer in me loves that Marie is really pushing to normalize this word and is pushing to create dictionary entries for it. If there's not a word for something, it's harder for people to experience that. And the three-part definition that Marie and her research partner, Dr. Sharon Flicker, use is essentially compersion refers to a broad range of positive emotions, attitude, thoughts, and or actions manifested in relation to one's extra-dyadic intimate relationships or to another person's gratifying experience in any context. Extra-dyadic intimate relationship, I think it's important to define, just refers to a romantic or sexual relationship that occurs outside of the primary two-person couple-centric relationship. And compersion is often used in the context of non-monogamous or open relationships. But I like that they expanded the definition to I mean, the original definition was really just focused on non-monogamy, which was created in the Carista community in San Francisco, but they expanded the definition to include in any context. So I love that your colleagues are starting to use this word to be like, I'm happy for you. The languaging piece of this is so important, and creating, yeah, more of an understanding of what this word means. And my hope is that by having this conversation and creating this book series, we can really help normalize and promote the idea that compersion is a real option for people, that we don't have to assume that extradyadic relationships equal jealousy, that there are other things and feelings that we can aspire to.
Man, beautiful. I love the journalist and book nerd in you. It's so cute.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your kind of journey to compersion, and that might include anything from experiences that were non-romantic or intimate, but just kind of like how you arrived here, like any of those kind of key threshold experiences or shifts, or just often I feel that sometimes polyamorous people come across as like evolved or enlightened. Often my friends are like, I could never do that. I'm like, well, don't get me wrong, it's fucking hard. And I think it's so good to let people know like this was a journey. So I'd love for you to share just, yeah, a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I think my best Metamour relationship was a couple years ago. And it was with a dear friend whose fiance I started dating. So she and I had been friends to start with, and she and I were definitely a much more emotionally intimate than I was with him, who I was dating, during the whole time that we were together. And it was the first experience where I felt a real sense of collaboration with a metamour. We talked frequently, and she was able to share some insights with me about where he was on his own healing journey, which helped me take some of his more avoidant actions less personally. And so it was really this like open ecosystem of her helping me understand our shared partner in a way that I wasn't able to through my direct relationship with him. So that was a very enlightening experience. And I guess to take a step back a little further, in some ways, I think my process of differentiating from my nesting partner, Sky, is directly tied to my ability to feel compersion. There was a time when he and I used to do absolutely everything together. We've been together for 12 years, and about 7 years ago, we ran a video production company together in New York and LA, and really became super enmeshed and codependent. And eventually we decided to close that company to save our marriage because it was too much togetherness. And as we began that process of really honoring our differences and individuating into two separate humans who actually had very diverse needs and wants, I think we were able to create space for other people to fill the needs that the other one didn't share. So I'm sure I'll talk about this more as we go on this book club journey. But I think when he realized that he was pretty kinky and I actually wasn't, it was for sure challenging when there were suddenly other people who were filling his needs that I didn't want to or couldn't fulfill. But I think the more comfortable I became with those differences and was able to take a step back from experiences that I wasn't super excited to have with him, it created space for other people to step in and be really excited about sharing space with him in a way that I could tell really brought him a lot of joy and excitement. So I think that experience of, really discovering that key difference and creating space and working with it, and for sure feeling all the jealousy and competition with other women who were kinkier than me, was a challenging journey, but it was the beginning of getting a taste of compersion when I finally began to relax into knowing that he could have a kink partner and that didn't diminish my place in his life as a valued person.
That's powerful. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I can see like what a shift in your marriage it's been to go from running a company and like having so many overlapping shared spaces, and now to be in a space of also like I am hearing in that like a lot more self-discovery. Also, as you've like become polyamorous coach and like a dating coach, you know, and he's exploring other things. It's like not just this like, I don't know, yeah, I see it like you said, individuation, more self-discovery, which is something that's like so powerful in a long-term partnership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, modern dating culture really celebrates that symbiosis phase
Yes.
where people become one and it's very easy to get stuck there, and by really pulling that apart, we're now able to come back together in a much more healthy and supportive way where
Mhm.
we are two separate individuals and it's a choice to be together versus an obligation.
Part. I love that. How
Yeah.
powerful, right? To choose each other even after like a decade of relationship.
Mm-hmm. What about you? Any tastes of compersion that you want to share?
When I was like 26, 27, I was a school teacher. And so I was dating at the time my partner teacher, and he taught math and science. I taught English and history. It was very cute. We were like worked together, lived together, taught together, did everything together. It was beautiful until it wasn't. I was, you know, so young in my own like healing work and journey, and so was he. And so, you know, we were burnt out. Didn't have any tools at the time to like manage my stress. And I feel like we were so enmeshed, and then it exploded. And then, you know, a year and a half later, or several years later, I met Justin, who's the polar opposite. He's like fiercely independent, you know, was deeply committed at the time to like, I will never get married. I will never move in with anybody. If I move up with anybody, it will be my twin. And so Justin has a twin brother. And that was a very different orientation. I also have, my mom has many sisters. We come from a very Mexican matriarchal system where, while there's still, you know, some like patriarchy, of course, like there's a very submissive energy with many of the men that we encounter. So it was so different to be like in my kind of like fierce, like self, and Justin's like, I'm not getting married. I'm gonna actually move in with my brother. And it was such a different reorientation. So for years, I think I first really learned how to share him with his brother and have compersion for them. And they did many things together, like camp and hike and mountain bike. And it was very different, a different orientation from all of the other relationships I had experienced, where it was like, we do everything together. Or Justin was like, I'm going to go on a 2 week mountain biking trip, and no, you're not invited. And I don't know if I'll ever live with you. And so it was, for me, it was like a huge kind of awakening. And what I discovered in that, similar to you, was that I actually enjoyed having this independence that I had never had before. And I cultivated my own passions and on my own empowerment journey. And I really learned that when Justin would go on these trips, he'd come back and he was so happy, so nourished, so like mountain biking is his favorite thing to do. Being in nature is his favorite thing. And when he can spend several weeks like in the woods, he comes back just like ready to connect with me. So it took a while. Like there were many fights like along the way, and many times where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, you know, but I think where I've landed, like Justin's on a, you know, 4 week mountain biking trip right now. And I really learned to appreciate these times when we're apart. And especially in this moment when I'm grieving the breakup of an ex partner, I actually can sit in this space of aloneness, which I think is so healthy. Like I feel like we have a fantastic marriage. And so much of that has been space that we've learned to take from each other, which many people don't understand.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that ability to like find joy in solitude is
Yes,
such an important part of being able to do non-monogamy well.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel like I've been able to apply that to him dating other women, and something I feel like for so long with him dating other women, I had such a fear of like when he goes on the date and he comes back, I'm going to feel this big distance. And I feel like actually with Justin, it's the opposite. Like when he comes back, he's so happy, and then he wants to connect. And I feel like benefited by that happiness. And that for me has been a really sweet place for me. Like
Mm.
I remember, I think one time maybe you were in Grass Valley visiting or something, and I think you guys went on a hike, and he came back, and actually Marie had coached me because I was like, we were struggling at the time with transitions from dates. I think many people struggle. Like especially when you live together. It's like he comes back, you smell like her, what'd you guys do? Like all the things, and they had been bumpy, and I've been really working with Marie to have these smooth transitions. And so she's like, what would it be like to like come back and be in this energy of love and welcome him into that? And so I like lit all these candles. I was like in a cute little outfit. I had the fire going, and I like received him in this just like really loving way. And that was such an incredible experience. It's something I really try to practice, and it isn't always easy, especially if I'm in a place of my own like trauma triggers. But that experiencing the ways that his happiness is medicine for our marriage is one of the things that keeps me moving forward.
I love that. His happiness is medicine for our marriage. Woo! Put that on a bumper sticker.
Oh, we got to write that down. That's one of our affirmations.
Definitely.
Is there anything else you want to share about your own like pathway to compersion before I go to the next question?
I think I've heard you refer to Justin's mountain biking as his like other mistress, which I also love. And yeah, I think like learning to give our partners space to do the things they want to do that don't involve us can be hard, to feel left out and excluded. And I think it's a good practice of remembering like, oh yeah, I have hobbies too that my partner doesn't want to participate in and isn't invited to.
Totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm thinking about Jessica Fern's foreword, which was amazing. So cool that she wrote this foreword. And she says, the monoromantic paradigm that conditioned me to see other women as dangerous and affection for another being tantamount to one of the gravest breaches conceivable. Oof, right? Yeah. And I know from my own like previous monogamous relationships, and especially having been cheated on and all those things, it's like I have an orientation of that. So I'm curious, like, how are you unlearning this paradigm, and what might be possible, and what has maybe been possible with all of your experience when you can reorient and move again away from this like competition and move towards collaboration? And especially in this relationship women to women, because I think in our like mainstream dominant culture and this system, like white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, we see so many, I'm sure you've experienced many examples of women really feeling like we're pitted against and we're acculturated to see each other as competition, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely raised in a family with two brothers and deeply desired a sister. And remember being told when my younger brother was born that I cried because he wasn't a little girl. So I think I have since a young age desired to have close relationships with women, but it wasn't necessarily something, growing up, I don't think I was good at having relationships with women. And I think a lot of it, had to do with kind of that culture of cool girls and mean girls and all of this comparison and competition, and even, the beauty industry that has these insane standards of what we're supposed to look like. Yeah, I think so much of learning how to do non-monogamy well is really an unlearning process of all of that, and creating space for everyone to thrive and get their needs met, and learning to change the way we relate to one another, and the practice of really leaning into Metamour relationships and creating friendships and having vulnerable spaces like this to really talk about our fears and insecurities has been so healing for me.
I love that. I mean, I see you since I met you, like really practicing collaboration in a way that I think is really rare. And I think, again, in like white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, there's like a hoarding of resources. And I think as a trauma survivor and as a person of color, I have my trauma and the historical legacy of like them wanting to like protect out of a place of like fear it will be stolen or taken. And it's been so cool, I think, to be in relationship with you and witness like your immediate generosity, which has been so fun for me to try to reciprocate in my own ways. Everything from like you've immediately are like, here's an invitation to this, here's an invitation to this, like come do this. And it's been very, very like tangibly different than how I've experienced any other metaphors, but also just people. Even in white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, even both of us were like both relationship coaches. There could be this comparison or this like hoarding of resources, or like, no, like, we can't do this together. But immediately there's been this, I think, energy, which for me is so cool, around leaning into actually what's possible when there's a collaborative energy, like how much more impact, how much more creativity, how much more magic. I think that's an attitude you embody really beautifully, and a practice, not just an attitude, but like a practice I see you really engaged in. I'm curious if there's like when that started happening for you.
Very sweet reflections. Thank you. I I mean, my mom was an entrepreneur who started a bagel shop on Main Street in a small town in Oregon, which was very much the center of the community. It was where people went to see each other and be together. And I think something about that experience of just her having a vision of like, this small town needs this. And then she created and brought together all the resources to make it happen, I think was probably the first modeling of really centering community and creating spaces for people to gather. And yeah, I don't think I've ever totally made that connection until this moment, but I think that was really the
Mm.
beginning of desiring to have spaces to bring people together and wanting to produce events. And a lot of my background is in retreat production and event production. And yeah, and I think over the years that like love of hosting and gathering has only grown stronger. And
Mm.
yeah, like I said, polyamory is my favorite topic, and it's rare to find people who also really love geeking out on the philosophy and the hard lessons, and who have real lived experience and their own wisdom to bring to the table, which I think is why when we first met, I was like, oh, cool. You guys have been together for 12 years. We've been together for 12 years. There's a lot of shared wisdom and knowledge and hard earned lessons. Grateful to just create atmospheres where truths can emerge, and we can kind of polish some of our hard lessons and learnings for other people to hopefully learn from and maybe avoid some of our mistakes.
That's beautifully said, honey. And I hear in that, and I feel in that so much humility, which I'm like, been starting to think about, like, I love, we're both witches. So I love thinking about like the cauldron, and like, what are the ingredients in the cauldron that actually like really make thriving relationships on all levels, whether it's a metamour relationship or anyone in the polycule. And like humility is something that really comes up for me in that. And I think both of us have embodied that. I've really experienced that for me, like very active humility, and it's beautiful. I think it helps build trust.
With all of this, it's so helpful just to continue to have a beginner's mind
Girl.
and be like, okay, what are we gonna where are the learnings and growth edges gonna be today in the season? And I think anytime, yeah, we try to live outside of dominant mainstream ways of relating and operating, it's helpful just to continue to be open to learning and sharing, and trying to find other people who are on a similar journey.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about, especially thinking about my ex-fiance, as I was just talking about our old relationship that just came up earlier. And we, without getting in all the details, there was like some cheating involved, all like on both ends, some dishonesty, and also the experience of really feeling like there were multiple women like fighting for his attention and for him to commit. And so this like old paradigm is very real. But I wonder if I definitely have had many experiences of like having been cheated on, having had parents cheat on each other, etc. This very real experience, but then also in this like narrative that there can only be one. And that conditioning and experience is so hard for me, especially after having been cheated on multiple times by different partners over the years. It's very hard to unlearn that it could be safe and we don't have to compete. And I'm really honest with myself and everybody that like I'm really working with that, because it's really hard for me to trust, and I actually don't totally know what it looks like to be like you're an amazing, kick-ass, beautiful, stunning woman. And I actually don't need to compare myself to you out of fear that like you will be better and then he will leave me for you. And I've said this before, but I think I'm always trying to get real with this reality of like we all have agency and choice. And at any time, if Justin like this moment marriage is no longer good for him and he decides to leave, like I will be okay and that's okay. And like just because there's another beautiful, empowered woman coming into the picture doesn't mean that like it's going to mean the break of the connection. But that narrative is so strong for me. And I think I'm grateful for this lived experience with you where it's like actually it doesn't have to mean that. The entering of another beautiful human in my marriage does not have to mean the end of mine. But that's a really hard thing for me to let go of.
Yeah, that's so real. And I'll just say, because I hear that is like a tender place for you, like my intention is not to like remove you from your throne, but to like honor your marriage and be like, I respect you. Like, how can we like create the conditions where we can all thrive and feel abundant and don't have to, Justin's affection with me doesn't take away from his love for you.
Oh, bless that. I received that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to this next question here.
Yeah.
Also in the foreword by Jessica Fern, she says, this work is fostering increased awareness, comprehension, and dialogue about compersion across both academic circles and wider societal discourse, serving as a pivotal step towards cultivating a social framework that appreciates and normalizes intimate relationships outside the traditional monogamous paradigm. It speaks to the very essence of social transformation. Compersion is not just a feeling or heightened experience. It is also political. Boom, that gives me chills every time, girl.
Mm-hmm.
So how is practicing compersion a political act for you? And how is this practice not just part of intimate relationships and polycules, but like our collective at large?
A couple things. There are still places in this country, I mean, most of the country and the world, where people can lose housing and benefits and services if they're discovered to be non-monogamous. I think it's important to remember that the US Constitution does not have discrimination protections for individual relationship statuses like it does for race and religion and gender. I think that's part of it. And Open is working to pass anti-discrimination ordinances and have done that in 4 cities to kind of model what is possible.
Wow.
And then I think, you know, another political part is just the idea of moving away from patriarchal systems of control and hierarchy and really unlearning colonization and monogamy as our only option. I think there are so many other ways of relating when we look to other histories and other cultures before European ideologies were shoved down everyone's throats. And yeah, I really resonate with decolonizing our relationships and moving away from some of these systems that really are disempowering and leave us disembodied.
Amen. Hallelujah. I love that.
Yeah. What about you? Any other political?
You said so many good things. I mean, bless all the work that Open's doing. That's really powerful. So grateful for that kind of, I wanted to use the word pioneering, but that's a hella colonizing word, so let's not use it. But for this expansive, liberating work. I mean, so many things. I think like, you know, both of us have chosen not to have kids, which I want to put a pin in for us to talk about that, because I think that's also, for me, very much a part of decolonization and liberation for me. Understanding that most likely many of my ancestors did not have choice to decide to be a mom, and also to like, or decide who they were going to marry and how all of that went down. And I think for me, I feel so grateful for all of the work of my ancestors and just all of the human beings before me that have created the kind of conditions that you and I have to have choice and to express like, what do we want? And part of me feels like it's this like gift and act of love to my ancestors to be like, they didn't give their blood, sweat, and tears so that I could just do the status quo. Like, I actually have the opportunity to do something so radically different, and let me fucking take it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always, maybe you felt similar. I'd be curious about this for you, but I've always had a very big energy and wild, and like as a trauma survivor, some unhealthy, like self-destructive patterns. But for most of my experience, I'd say like 13 on, was feeling like men were, not women actually. I rarely felt this way with women that I dated, but really mostly men. When they encountered my kind of like wild feminine, it was both very sexy and attractive and amazing, and then also at the same time very threatening and scary. And it's been so different to be in this relationship with Justin, which is part of the reason why I've moved towards polyamory, because I feel like he naturally embodies compersion, but he actually really embodies liberation in a way that's so deeply profound for me, where he forever has been like, yes, fairy queen, like stand in your glory, and just like we'll sit and watch, like take up space, be wild, be sexy, like in a way I've never had anybody in my life like really revel in. I love that so much. Just like in everything from like, I travel a lot from work, like go do your thing. Like he just has so much fierce support. And I've been really moved to reciprocate that because it feels like this deep active liberation, which for me as an activist and as an educator working in a lot of oppressive systems, it's been really powerful to be like, not only how does this play out in our collective, but how does this play out in my fucking marriage? Like how do I really embody this energy of liberation? And that's one of the things that Marie's really coached me around. I feel so grateful for when I get in my like, oh, I don't want to, or this feels hard, or like small minded. She's like, but you want a liberated marriage. Like you want to like live outside of patriarchy. And I'm like, yes, I do. Okay.
Good reminder. Thanks, Marie.
Like, okay, fine.
Thanks for grounding me in my values and vision. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I love that. And I actually, yeah, when I first came to your house, I saw some of your witchy things around and I was like, "Oh, cool. Justin's married to another witchy woman." Like, great. He wins extra points. Because I'm like, okay, not all people I've related to understand that or have space for it, or yeah, I've definitely had partners in the past kind of poke fun at my spiritual practices, and I was like,
Mm,
nope, that does not work for me. So I love that he's able to hold that space for you, encourage that wild feminine to emerge.
amen.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm curious, are there any, like, we've spoken about so many things, about our pathway to compersion, about how this is a political act, about composting competition and moving towards collaboration. Are there any kind of closing thoughts that are still here that you want to share?
Yeah, I think the final thing that I would love to just bring into this space, because I think Marie said it so well, and I love the sentence. She writes, non-monogamy is about developing an orientation to love that honors every person's sacred autonomy, as well as embraces collaboration and deep interconnectedness. So I love this as another intention for us as we go on this journey, really embracing collaboration, deep interconnectedness, and honoring every person's sacred autonomy.
Mm, I love that. I see that as a intention and a prayer, like weaving and rippling out of like
Mm-hmm.
honoring everyone's sacred autonomy and also like remembering the ways we're interconnected, which I think so often in our white supremacist capitalist patriarchy we can forget that actually like, we're so deeply interconnected. It's beautiful.
Yeah, unlearning individualism, moving towards mutualism. Love this for us.
There's something about our combination that goes straight to the heart, like every fucking time. There's like it's a little wild because you're like, ooh, it's like revealing. And I was texting you that, I mean, it was yesterday, I don't know when, but I was just like really feeling into what I really want us to start talking about is like trauma informed polyamory. And part of that like inspiration for me is really feeling actually about how you and I and Justin navigate like what that means, and are actually in this practice of like, how do we honor each other's trauma? How do we honor each other's stories? How do we honor each other's wholeness? And how do we actually like care for that in this?
I think so much of non-monogamy is it shows you the tender places and then can push right on them. And I think, yeah, kind of learning to map each other's trauma history and triggers and patterns and what conditions create safety and what provokes fear responses, I think selfishly is like something that I'm really excited to learn about you as we go on this journey, in hopes that the deeper that I know you and the more trust that we can build, that the more freedom it creates for all of us and spaciousness to explore and center pleasure and joy and connection in ways that patriarchal society says is deviant and dysfunctional.
More pleasure, more joy, more liberation. I'm here for all of it. Yay.
I'm so grateful that we have a whole book with all these different chapters to kind of dig further into all of this. There's so much rich territory and conversations that I'm looking forward to having with you. And yeah, what a cool journey we're going to go on.
Amen. I'm here for it.
Do you want to move to a close?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, what a rich and powerful conversation we've had, love. Thank you so much for bringing your heart and your wisdom and your presence and your listening. You're such a good listener of me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to share space with you.
Amen. So I'd love to have a little somatic, mindful closing moment. And I was just thinking too that, especially like identifying as a bruja and as a witch, like I really believe in the power of this energy to heal and transform, like not just us, but like that it ripples out. And so in these somatic moments, I love having this feeling of like, may it be in service to liberation everywhere, may it be in service to decolonizing monogamy everywhere. Yes. So we'll just allow that. So if it feels good, I want to come back to this affirmation that we started with, which is the title of this series. I am composting competition and moving towards collaboration. I'm composting competition and moving towards collaboration. I'm composting competition and moving towards collaboration. Just going to invite us to sit and breathe in those words, imagining we're stitching them to the walls of our heart. And opening up this space between you and I that's composting any competition that is existing between us, weeding that out, letting that go, and really creating this beautiful garden pathway of collaboration. And may that path of collaboration just extend out in every direction, in all 7 directions, for all beings everywhere to experience the magic of compersion. Let's just breathe that in a few times. Amen. And so it is.
I love this flow of taking turns facilitating and following. And yeah, thank you for taking us on this first journey together.
You're welcome.